Secondary dominants. First, we should understand what a dominant is. In any given key, for example, C major, there are three different spheres of authority, which denote how a chord or sound will behave in relation to the key. These are the tonic, 1, the subdominant, 4, and the dominant, 5. All chords are listed under one of these categories through an idea known as kinship, which is when chords share at least one tone amongst each other. When we say that a chord is dominant, we are referring to the fifth of the scale, which, in C, would be G major. In a G chord, we have the notes G, B, and D. A chord would have kinship with the dominant if it shared notes in common with this chord. For example, a 3 minor chord, in this case E minor, which has the notes E, G, and B. Dominant chords are strong, and they sway towards the tonic, 1, which is the center of the key. They have major quality, or if you're using sevenths, major minor, which is commonly referred to as dominant. They are used very commonly in cadences and lead us towards the tonic. However, these are not to be confused with secondary leading tones, which are like secondary dominants but pull in a different way and reflect diminished sevenths. A chord is a secondary dominant when it behaves like a dominant but is not the fifth of the key. In this way, we have a chord that is acting as a dominant of another key. For example, in the key of C, we can make a secondary dominant by taking a chord that is not a 5 and changing it to have the same quality as the 5. If we take an E minor 7 chord in the key of C, E, G, B, D, and change the quality to dominant by raising the third to G sharp, we will have made a secondary dominant. This would be written as 5/7 of 6th. It is named this way to mark its status as a secondary dominant. This means that it is the dominant of the 6th in the key of C, which is A. Let's try building through a proper process. First, we must find the key, then we will find the dominant, and then we will solve. If we want to build a 5/7 of 5 in the key of C, first we must find what the fifth of the key of C is. Counting our way there, we have C, D, E, F, G. So, the key of the chord will be G. Now, we must find what the dominant in that key is. In this case, the dominant would be D. So, in the end, we will have a dominant quality D chord. Using the key of G to build the chord, we have D, F sharp, A, C, which is dominant. That is only building the chord, however. How is it used? Well, in music, it can be used for extra flavor, to add triumph and resolution in different places than we could before. For example, if we take the key of G major and we make a simple progression, in this case, all that's being played is a G, A minor, D, and a G, which is the 1, the 2 minor, and the 5, and the 1. If we wanted to add a secondary dominant to this progression to give it a little more spice, all we'd have to do is change one of these to be a dominant of another. Of course, the only chord that would be obvious to use in this case would be the 2 minor. All we'd have to do is change that 2 minor to be a dominant. In this case, no sevenths or anything were used, it was just straight chords. So all that was done was turning that minor into a major, which gave it the same quality as a normal dominant chord. In this way, you can make things sound a little more special. You can hear how that chord wants to be pulled to the D, since the A major is the dominant of the key of D. So it sounds as if we've resolved on that D without finishing with the tonic of G. Now, if I do something like this, where I sort of lock you into the key, see how this sounds. You can see how it's sort of stuck out like a sore thumb, and it's really noticeable. It's a really neat way of adding flavor to your music.